Hello, Allie.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. It's going pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Liverpool, USA. We're best friends, and this is a best friends podcast. Um, yes, and I'm Allie, and you're Melissa,
Yes.
and we both have sisters.
Yeah.
Um,
Precisely one sister each, to be exact.
yeah, yeah, we have that in common. We both have a sister. Also, we have no brothers.
Yeah. Technically, I have two half brothers, but
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of they're like in their 30s or 40s or whatever. They're older than me, and I didn't grow up with them or anything, so really
yeah,
for all, intents and purposes or whatever, I only have one sister.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is like specifically growing up with a sister like
Yeah.
in the same house as you, and also like raised by the same parents as you.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, like being two sisters and living in a house with parents by ourselves kind of, like I think it's not unique, but it's certainly like a specific genre of childhood. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something that not everyone experiences, and everyone experiences different, but I think it's definitely like a specific experience, that is like unique
Yeah.
to people that have a sister and are a sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
for
I
me
mean,
specifically, I have a twin sister. So,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I did. So, as much as we both, have a sister, I think our sister experiences are like different by a considerable amount based on the fact that your sister is your twin sister
Yeah.
and my sister is 4 years younger than me.
Yeah, definitely. And I only have a twin sister, so like I do not know what it's like to have a sibling that's not the exact same age as me, which I do feel like, even though I don't have experience not being a twin, I like know for a fact that it's very there are like parts of it that are unique, like relative to a sibling that's not the same exact age as you. Like I know that there's things that come with that are just like different. um
Yeah,
which yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, I think the biggest example that I would assume is true, and you can speak on it as well. But my sister and I definitely had an era of time that we were like not compatible because our ages were like not compatible to like hang out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which I would assume is not really the case for you because you were always the same age as your sister.
Yeah, we were really just kind of like, I mean, I think that there are definitely parts in our life where we weren't as close, or like maybe we had some beef or something, but we definitely consistently were just kind of like a built-in friend, because we did
Hmm.
share a lot of the same experiences and like related to a lot of similar things. And so, like what was trendy with like one of us was trendy with the other one, because we were in the same generation, exactly. So yeah, they're
Yeah.
definitely, so that's true. We didn't have any kind of like non-compatibility because of like age. Yeah. We
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
were just like built-in friends for like all of growing up.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like the only time that it was like when my sister and I were both like kids, like under the age of like, I don't know, 10. I mean, kids can kind of hang out with kids that are 4 years younger than them, and it's like pretty okay. Like when I was 10 and my sister was 6, like we hung out. Like that was
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
You know,
When you're in
but it
like
was like
grade
when
school
I
age.
yeah, when we were both in elementary school for sure. Like we could like hang out. We were not necessarily into all of the exact same things, but like we shared like we would watch the same TV shows type of thing, like
Oh
we
yeah.
we were like roughly into the same types of things and like could get along and stuff. I think the only era of time that was like difficult because of our age difference was when I was like entering puberty and like teenagerdom, and my sister was still a kid. You know, like my sister was 10 and I was 14.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
10 and 14 are pretty like different ages,
Yeah,
you know.
that's when like the age brain process starts to speed up a lot. And yeah, so like the difference between like a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old I feel like is not quite as much as like a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was definitely our experience, I think, as sisters. And like, and I we've talked about it since we've both been adults, that like, yeah, that era of time when my sister was still like a kid and I was becoming like a teenager, we just like had not a lot in common. I was like starting high school and my sister was like still in elementary school, you know. And I think I can say this without hurting anybody's feelings, but I would say that I was like probably um very mature for my age. Like at age 14, I was like, you know, pretty mature for 14. And
Hmm.
I think my sister at age 10 was like a little immature for 10,
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Um like not in a mean way, just in a like yeah, I don't mean that as like a drag on her. I just mean like she definitely was like a little bit more innocent for longer, you know what I mean? Like she was a little bit
Okay.
more of a kid for longer. I grew up really fast, I think.
Hmm.
And I know that I've like talked about this briefly on here before, I think, but like I think that's very much to do with like um you know, just my life experience with like being sick and like like
Oh,
doing these
yeah.
different things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to grow up fast when you have to like, you know, understand why people might do things, or like I don't know, there's things that happen that are hardships that make you grow up faster.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you don't experience those things, sometimes you're able to stay a kid
Yeah.
longer. And I
Which
think
which I feel like even I mean and this is a totally completely different conversation as well, so I'll just like dip into this like just for a second and then go back. But I think it's
yeah,
also like girls anyway tend to like not exclusively, but girls tend to um have to mature faster anyway and like grow up faster anyway just because of like societal norms and stuff that will happen to younger girls that doesn't usually or ever happen to young boys, you know, comparatively or anything like that. So that is already a thing. And then, you know, some people like you
that's
have
so
more, you know,
yeah.
experiences that will maybe even make that like, you know, even faster.
I think that's so interesting that you brought that up, actually, because I think something that's key to my sister and I's childhood is neither of us were confined to gender roles too much. I mean, you know, my parents weren't really like that, and we grew up in Oregon, so it wasn't like, I mean, we grew up in Southern Oregon, so I guess it was like a little bit
Yeah.
like that, but not too much. But I was always friends with girls, surrounded by girls, like that kind of thing. My sister was only friends with boys. My sister was a Boy Scout. Like
Oh, interesting.
um she only hung out with boys. She did like quote unquote boy activities. She surrounded herself with boys. So I think it's interesting that you brought that up, because that kind of tracks. I mean, like I feel like I was mature for my age, partially because of that other stuff that I talked about, but maybe partially because I was more in the like girl culture that demands more of that, and my sister was more in like boy culture, and like she kind of didn't have to do some of that because the boys around her didn't have to.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I feel like we're being like sociologists. We're like,
I know, we're like
but
psychoanalyzing.
yeah, analyzing that. But that's really interesting though. And then I think like to
Yeah,
kind of like bring it more back to like the comparing sisters thing. It's also interesting that because even though we are twins and we are still very similar and like our whole lives we were very similar, we did have different interests and stuff. And similarly, I think to you and your sister. Um, my sister was like she definitely went through a tomboy phase. Like
yeah,
like textbook tomboy phase. She's always
yeah,
been more like tomboy than me and I have always been more like girly. Um
yeah,
which is interesting although we did share almost all, if not like really just all the same friends growing up.
Mhm.
So, which is another interesting thing that I feel like not a lot of siblings have it, and it's like because you're in like different ages and different classes, but we just had like
Yeah.
mostly the same friends growing up. We were in different cuz like
Yeah.
all through grade school there was except for one grade, I think it was like first or second grade, I don't remember, and kindergarten. We had different teachers. Like every grade, like first, second, third to sixth, was there was two different teachers for that grade. So like two different classrooms for that grade.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so every year except for two, I believe, we had different teachers. But like at recess and stuff, we still like hung out. And I think there were some teachers that were like, we want to try to get your daughters, like to my parents, like, like play with different kids or whatever. But it's like, no, we can, like, I think our mom was like, don't do that. Like, they can play together, like it's fine. Like, it's good that they are like friends. And we still made other friends outside of each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but, uh, but yeah, but we did have like, like a separate interest thing. And she was definitely way more like tomboy than me, which was, yeah,
Interesting. I
yeah.
always think it's so interesting that, like, and this is probably even more so for you and your sister. But like it's so interesting to me that Jess and I could like have the same DNA basically, like we have the same parents and we were like raised by the same parents and in the same house and in the same place and like we basically had the same childhood just like 4 years different.
Mm-hmm.
Um but we're like very different people, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I think a lot of that just also has to do with like even if you are, like raised by the same parents and like in the same environment and even like in the same house and in the same town and everything, you still
Mhm.
have different experiences like outside of the house. Like there's only so
Absolutely.
much that your parents can like control in the end. And
Yeah.
so like you're meeting different people and like I mean your brain, I mean Nicole's and I even less so, like our DNA is actually almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
But like your brains like are different, so there are different
Yeah.
balances of like all the chemicals and everything that like you get from your parents or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is interesting, it is interesting.
Yeah, I know Jess and I have like different enough DNA because we don't look alike and we my
Yeah, you
sister
really
is like
don't.
we really don't and
Yeah.
it's interesting. Um and my sister's like a foot taller than I am and like, I have autoimmune diseases my sister like does not and I'm like
Mhm.
thanks parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Do you
but
think that you have, cuz I never, sorry, I interrupted you.
no, you're good.
Um, do you think that there's any kind of like, cuz I don't know how it's different with twins, but like I know that it's different like obviously with twins, and I know that like my fiance, like Justin, experiences this. I think he definitely experiences like second child syndrome. Like he has an older
Yeah.
sister. And so
Yeah.
do you think that there's anything that's like maybe not necessarily sister specific, but like first sibling specific that you feel like were there more like pictures taken of you or like, like
Um
stuff like that?
So I have like two things that come to mind. The first is yeah, so my dad when I was like basically from when I was born until I was about like 6 or 7 probably, my dad filmed home movies all the time. Like
Mm,
he would like
mhm.
record like our house and like what was going on in our house like all the time.
Mhm.
And so there's all these like home movies that my dad would take with his like huge like freaking 90s like recording camera.
Yeah, yeah. We had a
Um,
similar thing. Yeah, we have like a lot of super old home videos from when we were like
yeah.
babies. Yeah.
So my dad would do that a lot when I was like a baby and like a toddler and like a young kid. Um, but it stops about the time my sister is like 3 years old.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have more of that than she does. But in terms of like pictures, I think, and like in scrapbooks, as you know, my mother is an avid
Yeah,
scrapbooker.
she was on that, yeah.
So, I technically have more years of scrapbook, but that's simply because
Because
I'm
you're older.
older.
Yeah.
Um, and not because my mom was slacking in any way.
Yeah.
um, But I do think one thing that is like a true difference between the way that they decided to raise older child versus younger child is that I had more rules. Like for sure I had more
Mm.
rules.
Mhm.
And so like they definitely revised a lot of rules after I was done meeting that rule, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Like
I
like
know
one
that's like a
example,
stereotype, so that kind of like
yeah.
tracks.
Yeah, like one example is like I was not allowed to have sleepovers like at all for any reason
Oh.
until I was like literally 17 or 18 years old. Like I was not allowed to have sleepovers
Mm.
in any way. And my parents had good reasons for having that rule. And it was strict and there were no exceptions so that they could say there's no exceptions. You know what I mean? Like it was so
Mhm.
that they had a blanket like if we make even one exception, then there's like wiggle room type of thing. So it's like
Mm.
even for people that we like completely trust, it would be completely fine. Like it's still a no just so that it's like a blanket rule, you know?
Hmm.
Um but then for my sister, like people that were like my sister still wasn't allowed to have sleepovers like in general, but like for people that they did actually like completely trust and completely know and stuff, she was allowed to have sleepovers with them. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like okay.
Yeah.
Um but like for the most part, I like really respect the hell out of that rule that my parents
Hmm.
made because
That's really interesting.
I think it was a good rule for lots of reasons. My dad was a parole officer for sex offenders, so you know
Mm, yeah.
he
That's
had
really
many.
interesting cuz we had sleep I wouldn't say that we had like a lot of sleepovers. Um but and like my mom cuz I had strict parents.
Yeah,
like my sister and I were pretty sheltered, you know, just like in all honesty, like I mean I guess we probably had a pretty like first sibling syndrome, but it was just like two of us forever.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. But we could have sleepovers, but it was like we couldn't like go into a friend's house unless our like mom had like met those parents and like maybe even been into that house.
Yeah,
So like that was a thing, and then therefore like we couldn't have sleepovers at that person's house. When we got a little bit older, it got like a little bit more loose, like slightly, but like not really. Um,
yeah,
and a lot of the time when we did have sleepovers, it was at our house.
mm,
So that was like a little bit different
yeah,
too. Like our dad was so chill about friends spending the night. And
mm,
we had like friends that had different kinds of like home lives. So it was like
yeah,
sometimes they just like want to stay over just because it was like more fun at our house. Like I didn't have
yeah,
any like I don't want to be like oh my like I didn't have friends that have like I don't want to imply anything super bad like they didn't have like they couldn't
yeah,
go home or
yeah,
anything but you know
yeah,
anyway so you know we would just it was like fine but it was a little bit more loose than that like there wasn't like no exceptions it was like she just had to have like met the parents and like maybe even been over to their house and like seen what was going on first and then we could
yeah,
like do the sleepover. But yeah, that's an
yeah,
interesting rule. Which I get. I understand that. It's like it's
yeah.
different than I grew up, but like I understand that. I think that's like a valid rule.
Yeah, I had pretty I would say my parents were pretty strict in a lot of ways, and there were definitely a few ways in which my parents were not strict.
Yeah, I know
That
you've
like
had different I don't know if we're straying too far from sisters, but like
that's true.
just talking about sisters, but like I definitely know that you had like different rules than me because you had like different experiences than I
Yeah,
did.
I mean
But
my parents grew up as my parents' childhoods were both like growing up in really strict environments, you know?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
not necessarily from their parents, although I would say their parents were pretty strict as well. But like more just like the culture that they grew up in because they grew up in southeastern Idaho, and so I know both of them were trying to push back on that a little bit and not make that the environment that we grew
Oh,
up in.
yeah. Which is
So there
kind of
were,
funny because my mom grew up like I think she maybe didn't have enough rules. Like I know that she had like a pretty crazy childhood and like
mm,
got into some troubles and you know like did some crazy kid stuff. I don't know the extent and now I look at her and I'm like you did not do crazy kid stuff like what but so I think she kind of went like maybe too far in the opposite direction and was just like, I
Yeah.
need to like have rules and like protect my kids. But yeah.
I would love to do another episode where we talk more about
Yeah.
um I don't know exactly what, but just
Our moms.
uh yeah, we could talk about our mommy issues. I don't know. Um yeah, but anyways, back to sisters, I guess. Either way, right? I definitely had an era of time where I was not as close with my sister, and it sounds like maybe you definitely had less than me, but some eras where you were less close, like whatever. But I would say now as adults, the way I perceive it is that both of us are extremely close to our sisters.
Yeah, yeah. And of course Nicole and I have a more unique situation because like we still live together.
Yeah, yeah.
And we haven't spent like when I was in high school that uh there was 1 week. It was the last band camp that I did the
Hmm.
week after we graduated high school, and that was the longest that we had been apart from each other literally entire our entire life was like that 7
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
And then and then like in college when I studied abroad in England and met you and we were there for 4 months, that was like
yeah,
by far the longest that we'd ever been away from each other. And it was kind of like amusing but like not in a funny way, like in a little bit of a sad way.
yeah,
My sister in college was the one that was more like, someday we're going to not live together. Like someday we're going to have to be like separate, and that's like we're just going to have to like
yeah,
do that. And I feel like I was having like a little bit more trouble conceptualizing that, cuz like I know it's true and I still know it's true, and I'm like more and more okay with it every day cuz I know that like even when we don't live together, we'll still like make a point to be somewhat close because we just are, like
yeah,
we just are. But she actually had a harder time than I did like when I went to England. Um
yeah,
which I don't think anyone like could have really predicted. But she was also going through specific things that were
yeah.
harder, and I was like in a foreign country having a
Like
time.
having a
So
good
yeah,
time. Yeah.
so yeah, but so yeah, we are very close. We're like built-in roommates, pretty much, which was really nice in college.
Yeah, yeah,
I only had to live with strangers in England, which was like the like least great part of it. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, but I think it's really interesting, and I'm not like questioning the closeness of you and your sister, but I think it's really interesting to compare just like more, I guess, of like a physical closeness, because you
Yeah.
you grew up together, but obviously you don't live together now, and you're super close, and I don't know how often you see each other or talk, but I know that you do.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't lived with my sister since I graduated high school. Um that was the last time I lived with my sister. So that was 6 or 7 years ago, 7 years ago almost. Um no, 6 years ago. 6.5 years ago. I don't know. Anyways. So yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've lived with my sister, and also when I moved out she was 14.
Oh
So
wow, yeah, yeah.
she's like become an adult since then. And I would say like when I moved out about that time, like when my sister was like becoming a teenager, that's when we started like really being friends, I think.
Mm.
Like we were close when we were little kids because we were just little kids that lived in the same house, you know? Like we were I guess we were friends. I don't know. Like we loved each other and we always have loved each other.
Yeah.
And like we hung out and it was fine. But I don't think that we were like friends until I moved out. um which is interesting, and I think it was honestly like I think our relationship was greatly helped by the fact that we don't live together
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
Not because we were like hard to live with, like neither of us like hated living with each other. I think it was just like I moved 4 hours away from my parents' house when I moved out for the first time, and I so my sister, if she wanted to talk to me, had to like make an effort to talk to me,
Yeah.
like I wasn't just around anymore.
Yeah.
And same with me, like if I wanted to talk to Jess, like I had to call her or like send her something in the mail or like whatever. And so we started doing that when I went to college, and we kind of grew our friendship, grew our relationship. And then in like when my sister was about like a junior in high school and I was like about a junior in college, that's when our relationship actually became like really really close, I would say.
Hmm.
And we talk probably once or twice a week on the phone for like 2 hours.
Oh, you're
Um,
nice.
and like catch up and all of that stuff. And, of course, we like Snapchat and text and like whatever.
Yeah.
And now that my sister is an adult, we do have a lot more in common, I think. Like now that we're
Yeah.
just simply both adults, like we just have more things that we want to talk about that like make sense to talk about with each other, and like we have more of a friendship like connection. And I think like the key part of that is like we're friends who have like the exact same childhood experience basically. Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
friends who like deeply understand what it's like to be raised by our parents, you know?
Yeah.
Like
No one
um
understands more than each other than you guys. Yeah.
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 And like, we're friends who like really understand what it was like to grow up in Medford the way that we grew up in Medford, and like
Mhm.
all of these things, right? Like we have so much shared experience that like makes our friendship really deep at this point. And so yeah, I would say right like now in our lives, I don't see my sister super often. I see her probably 3 times a year at most. Like the last 2 years I've seen her like 3 times a year,
Mm.
maybe 4 times a year. So not a lot, like really not a lot. Um, and sometimes it's only for like a couple of days that I see her. But we do talk. We do talk on the phone like constantly, and I think just that like level of closeness that comes with like we like have the type of bond where we like deeply understand each other and like our experiences more than probably anybody else could, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it definitely a lot of that now that you like lay it out is definitely like maturity. Like
Yeah.
you're both like mature. Like if if I think about the time in my sister and I's life where we probably were like clashing the most, it was probably like when we were at our like angstiest in adolescence, which I think is
Yeah.
just like you're gonna clash with most people. So
Yeah.
like you're definitely gonna clash with like the people that you're like stuck in the same house with. And then Nicole
Yeah.
and I, we were like in the same classes and in the same house and so that gave to like a stronger bond, but also like when you're angsty, like you're gonna be angsty at each other. So yeah,
Yeah.
but now that like everyone's like a mature adult now, like more mature, it's like we can like
Yeah.
have these mature conversations now and like get each other. And then also, um, going off of that made me think you were kind of talking about like what makes you and your sister's relationship unique. So I don't know if this was like a little question on your prompt or not, but what do you think is something that makes like you and your sister's relationship like unique as sisters? Besides maybe like I don't know if there's any more. Maybe you kind of already like expanded on that enough, like your shared experience, like what marks you two as sisters and like not just friends, like
Yeah, I think it is our understanding of like what it's like to be raised by our parents. And like that kind of sounds like negative the way I'm saying it, and I don't necessarily mean it negative. Because I mean there's like lots of great things that my parents did for us that we like experienced together. But I think it's like, really truly nobody else except my sister knows what it's like to have my mom as their mom, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I totally get that with like all I mean, I really grew up with three parents, really. Like my
Yeah.
dad, my mom, and my stepdad. So like I
Yeah.
totally get where you're coming from and I think that makes a lot of sense. Is like other than a lot of the obvious things, like being sisters and twins that like make Nicole and I close, like
Mhm.
that is that is true and that's a really interesting thing to think about is like that's one of the things that makes us like the closest as sisters specifically is like we are the ones that understand more than anyone else like what it was like to be raised by our three specific like parental figures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like and all of the good things and all of the difficult things that come
Yeah.
with that. Like And like extended family as well. It's like nobody else like understands what it's like to have like this grandparent, or like,
Mhm.
and it's like my cousins, I guess, sort of, but it's like a different, there's something about like your sister who understands exactly like the family dynamics the same way that you do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's something that it's like is important to me to like have somebody to like not just talk about that with, because I can talk about it with other people as well, but like
Mhm.
they won't understand me the same way, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And there's something about, and this is something that I've been thinking about like more recently in life a lot, is there's something about the concept of understanding, like being understood, that
Yeah.
is just like a really, really strong bonding element to like relationships.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I know we talked about this when we talked about being in love with our partners.
Oh, yeah,
Is
yeah,
that like,
totally.
being understood by them is like the thing that makes like love so strong. And I think that's like exactly why we both are like extremely like bonded with our sisters, is that
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I think both of us have this like shared experience of like um being completely like heard and understood, like when we talk about our families and our parents and like whatever with our sisters, and like them talking to us about the same
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And neither one of us have like blood brothers, like full brothers that we like grew up in the same house with. Like I have like a step brother and two half brothers.
Yeah.
But I didn't like grow up in the same house as them, so I quite don't have quite the same experience as like the sister experience. But what are some
Yeah,
things that you think are like unique to like the sister experience that would be like totally different if it was like if your sister was a brother? I
that's
mean, some of
interesting.
them are like obvious, but there's you know,
Yeah.
because like my sister and I, because you mentioned a little bit earlier about how you think that your parents kind of raised you like pretty gender neutrally, you know. But I
In
feel
some
like
ways, yeah.
yeah, if I really think about it, I genuinely feel like we were raised like girls. Like I think like
Mm,
specifically, I can think of a lot of ways where it's like we were raised as girls. Like we were not raised like gender neutral. Like I think that there were definitely things that we were into that weren't just like girly things, you know, like I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is like Pokemon. I feel like it's pretty gender neutral, but it's also I feel like maybe a little bit more of like a boy leaning thing, you
yeah,
know?
I mean, it's certainly not girly, right? It's like
Yeah.
either gender neutral or
Yeah. Like
boy.
we were into
Yeah.
Barbies, but we also had like one of those cool metal Tonka truck dump trucks, and like we were into dirt
Okay.
and stuff. So like, you know, we were we like we did things that were like I don't know, like boy coded and like girl coded, but I feel like
Yeah.
largely, especially as we got older, we were raised as girls and as young women. And so I
Yeah.
definitely feel like the experience would be like way different if like I had a brother instead of a sister. Just because like which it's really
Yeah.
interesting being twins because we would have been the same age and still related on a lot of stuff. But
Mhm.
it would be interesting like cuz I know that we would have still been like treated different even though we were like the same age and like the same,
Interesting.
but I just feel like we would have been because of our because I mean like everyone is like that's how our society is, like people on the outside would have treated
Yeah.
us differently, but I like definitely feel
Yeah.
like there would have been stuff that was different. I
Interesting.
mean we wouldn't have realized it, like there's no way that I would know that, but I just
Yeah. Yeah.
like I know that it would be different if like I had a brother instead of a sister, like 100%, because there's just
Yeah.
things being raised as a girl and then just like also being biologically like a woman and like identifying as that and like we both do that that we relate on because we're both women, you know? And I think that
Yeah.
that like lends to our bond as well. Like I don't know if we probably wouldn't be as close as we are if we were like if one of us was like a different gender because we just like
Yeah.
have that in common too, you know, like those experiences too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it, right? Is that like, yeah, I have like a shared experience with my sister beyond just like our childhood experience and like our, parents and all of this. But like we also share the experience of being a woman, and I think like anytime that you share the experience of being a woman with somebody else, like this happens with like your friends as well, I
Mhm.
think. Like I would say this is true about our relationship, like you and me as well, that like we have like bonded on things that are like woman specific because we are both women, you know, and that has made us closer. And so I think that's true about like me and my sister as well, and it might not be true if she were my brother instead. um yeah, I don't think that my parents like raised us like extremely gendered. Of course, like society is gendered in a lot of ways. And I don't think that my parents were like absolutely perfect on like raising us gender neutral. Like, and I would say that they were better about being gender neutral than they were about being like heteronormative.
Oh,
my
uh-huh.
my parents were like, that was what I think was like extremely like one note, was that like we were raised like extremely like heteronormative. um which is not to say that my parents are like homophobic, they're not, but
No. I
they
mean,
just
it
like,
gets pretty deep when you like I don't fault
yeah,
my parents for, never having taken like a
yeah,
sociology class or whatever. You know,
right,
like
exactly. I'm
it's
like, they just did their best, like, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
um but yeah, and also it was like the early 2000s, like they were trying their
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like, I was never raised like, oh, I can't do something because I'm a girl or anything. It was more just like, um I think that there was a lot of like body image stuff that I think only
Oh
happens
yeah.
to women, that
Yeah.
like definitely was part of like my sister and I's, like my sister and I have bonded about that sometimes
Mhm.
because my sister and I have extremely different body types. Like I said, we don't look alike.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like specifically my sister is like a foot taller than me, and
Yeah.
like probably weighs less than me. Like we just literally are like completely different body types.
Yeah.
Um and so we've talked about that as well, like her and I, not just about like how our parents raised us in terms of like body image and like seeing women's bodies and like the way that society sees them, because my parents had a hand in that, but not like necessarily. I mean, it's mostly like media and society that has
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
of a hand in that. But yeah, we grew up 4 years different, and so we saw slightly different like media at different times in our lives. You know, like what was trending when I was 14 and vulnerable is like not the same as what
Mm.
was trending when she was
Yeah.
14 and vulnerable.
That's
Um,
true. That's interesting.
yeah, but yeah, I think we've like certainly bonded on like women specific issues, and like I know even recently like my sister and I have talked a lot about like women's healthcare stuff.
Mhm.
That has like been something that like I think for my sister is like difficult to talk about.
Hmm.
And like we talked about it, and like, you know, did that kind of conversation, and like I don't know, there's like a trust circle within a sister relationship, you know,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you can kind of just like talk about anything and it's like fine. Um so yeah, but I can definitely say that a lot of that is like women specific.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And then branching off of that, I'm just like remembering different like questions you had here.
Yeah.
Um, branching off of that, do you have, um, like, well, and I know that it's like a yes, but I'm just like curious to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts too. Um, like girlfriends growing up and then like now currently that you would call like a sister, but how is that like different? Like, how do you categorize like the sister friends versus like the sister?
Yeah, I mean, okay,
Like,
so
what
like I
makes
think
a friend a
obviously,
sister too?
yeah.
Yeah.
I know that we've said this about each other, that we
Yeah.
that we feel like we have, you know, somewhat of like a sister like bond.
Mhm.
And both of us would definitely say like it's not the same as the bond that we have with
Oh yeah.
our actual sisters,
Yeah.
but we do have like an extremely close friendship,
Mhm.
and it like definitely has sister like qualities as well. And I think part of that is just that, yeah, we have shared experiences that like bring us pretty close together, and like that level of trust I think is there. Like I would feel pretty comfortable like talking to you about, I think, anything that I would feel comfortable talking to my sister about. Like I think it's like
Yeah.
about the same level of like trust in terms of like what you would judge me for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where a lot of the not blood sisterly bond comes from, is that
Yeah,
trust. I think that's a really good way to put it. And then like, yeah, there's just like personal things that I feel like we have shared and would share with each other that
yeah,
you would like probably only otherwise share with like a close sister, you know?
yeah.
That makes that like gives that like that label.
Exactly. Like there's definitely things that I wouldn't necessarily share with like regular friends, I guess. Like
Mhm.
not that I don't trust my regular friends or that I don't like want to like have deep connections with them or whatever, but there's just things that it's like oh, like it just occurs to me that I should like share it with you or like share it with my sister, right? And it's that same level of like, yeah, like trust and like, oh, it just makes sense that like we would talk about this or we would like, you know, I don't know, have that kind of like relationship.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, cuz it's like a you know, it's a privilege for people to get to know stuff about you. And so like
yeah,
your friends, like not all of your friends are like what's the word that I'm trying to think of? Like you don't owe them, you know, like your personal information or anything like that. And so it's like you get to choose which ones that you trust, you know, which ones that you get to share certain stuff with. And you know, it's a very similar thing to like what I choose to share like with my like blood sister, you know, is like what I would
yeah,
like share with you. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and I mean it's exactly that where it's like yeah, like in the times that I have shared like tough stuff with you or like, you know, told you something that like pretty much no one knows or like, you know, whatever. Like it's always been met with like the type of love that I receive from my sister as well, you know, like when I tell my sister something like intense or whatever, or just like something like deeply personal or like I don't know whatever, right? Like she always meets it, like she's never like oh my god what the hell, like
Oh, yeah.
you know, like get out of here, like that's so weird or something, you know, like she would never
Mhm.
say that. Or she might joke about it but she wouldn't mean it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's also an honesty that is
Yeah,
like when you reach a certain level of closeness that is definitely existing in like sisters, cuz I would like it's funny that you say that because and I'm working on this. My sister and I we're so close that I think that we can still, and I know that it used to be worse when we were younger and especially when we were like teenagers, but we can be kind of mean to each other sometimes.
yeah,
And it's like definitely the kind of behavior that I like would not like I would not treat other people how I treat my sister, both in good and bad ways, which is like, you know, we work
yeah.
on it. We
I
you
I
know.
do relate to that, and I think it's this. I heard it described this way, but it's like you trust them so much to like never leave you that like you're like oh
Oh,
yeah if I'm like mean to them like they're still not gonna leave
that's
because
a
they're
good
my
way to put it.
sister.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But I think that's what happens when you become so close to somebody is you can
Yeah,
subconsciously have that mindset. Which is like
yeah,
not great. It's true, but it's not great. But
yeah. I
it's
mean,
true.
yeah, and it can be like I mean I think unconditional love is something that is like such a like satisfying and like rewarding feeling like feeling like somebody truly unconditionally loves you is like
Mm-hmm.
a good feeling but at the same time it's kind of yeah it can definitely lead to like toxic
Yeah.
behaviors.
Yeah, you have to like realize that and realize, oh, this person like trusts me enough that I need to be nice to them. You know, like I need
Yeah,
to like make this relationship like, you know, like be a source of positivity for this if I want that in return. You know, like if this is really
yeah,
going to be something like if we're really going to like choose cuz that's another thing is some people say that you like I mean you don't choose your siblings. You can choose, and this might be controversial to some people, I know it is. You can choose to like keep them in your life. Like there are
yeah,
people like if that is just not gonna work out for you, like if this unconditional thing, you know, like if it's being like abused too much, like you do not That is my
Yeah.
belief, is you do not have to keep people in your life just because they're like your brother or sister, or even
Or
your
your
mom or dad or,
parents. Yeah,
aunt or whatever. um
exactly.
but there is something special about, when people say like your chosen family and like your chosen brothers and sisters, um siblings, etc. Yeah,
Yeah.
that there is something special about like you have to, I feel like, choose even more than like your blood siblings. Like I feel like you have to choose even more to like be a, like a source of positivity,
Yeah.
positivity. Like you have to like actively be like, I can't, I'm not going to abuse this privilege because this is like really what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
And I think that's definitely true of, yeah, like, there is something unique about somebody who is not your blood relative, who you call like a sister, like,
Mhm.
like us, I would, if I was like describing you to somebody else, like, I might say the words like, she's like a sister to me, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And I think
totally.
that's like, you know, it's not the same as being actual like blood sisters, but it is unique in a way that's like we are choosing to be that
Mhm.
to each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
in a way that, like, I mean, again, we do both like choose to have good relationships with our sisters and like keep them good and put effort into like, being close and having shared experiences, like blah blah blah, right? Like, of course we both like show up to our sister relationships and try to like do our best, and like,
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
general we treat our sisters nicely and they treat us nicely back and like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But like there is something special about like, the people in our lives that we choose to be as close as family, that aren't.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, like my sister, even if there was some sort of thing that happened, some imaginable tragedy, and we didn't want to talk to each other anymore,
mhm.
it would be so hard, it would be virtually impossible to like not be exposed to my sister someday. Because
Yeah.
we're just like going to see family, and we're going to see a family that's going to like talk to us about this other person, or like we're going to be
Yeah.
exposed to each other at some point. But like you and I, like we're far enough removed physically that if we stop talking to each other, we could easily just like never see each other again, which is really sad
Yeah.
to think about. But like that's another way to put that in perspective, is how
Yeah.
you like choose your like not blood siblings.
Yeah, yeah, the fact that we are still as close as we are and stuff, even though we like don't see each other often enough, and like
Yeah.
we do live like 4 hours apart, and we aren't going to see each other at family reunions if we don't hang out, like, um yeah, I think that makes it even more like of a powerful bond. It's powerful in a different way, but it is
Mhm.
still powerful. And like, I think, yeah, sisterhood in general is a really powerful bond. Like, I think your chosen
Yeah.
sisters and your blood sisters, definitely that's the strongest relationships that I have in my life,
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
the people I'm bonded to in a sister like way.
Yeah. And then even specifically like leveling up from that, I feel like, and I don't know if it would make sense to have a separate podcast about this, because I don't know, like it to like have a podcast about twins specifically, because it's
Mm,
like, I don't know, cuz it's like, what would you
I can
what
ask
would
you
you do?
questions.
Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, cuz I mean, yeah, cuz I've thought about having podcasts about things that would be specific to you, but it's like, is that,
Yeah.
would that work? I guess it would. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it could totally work. But there's things,
Yeah.
um but yeah, just to like sprinkle that in there too, is there's something even more special about like having a sister, and then also that sister being a twin. It's like just even
Yeah.
a more level up of like being, and I know that not all twins are like this, but the ones that
Hmm.
are, like my sister and I know that there's a bond there that is just like
It's
really hard to
unmatched.
explain. Yeah. And
Yeah.
people, I've had lots of people joke about, like being like telepathically connected and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
use twin telepathy now like as a joke, but also and I don't believe in that kind of thing, but sometimes it's like, yeah, you know what? Some version of that exists. Like some sort
Yeah.
of, and I know that other sisters have that, and even really, really close friends have something like that, but there's something
Yeah.
about specifically our twin bond that is a twin specific bond that is just
Yeah.
like, yes,
Absolutely.
we are telepathically connected. No, I cannot explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like just like interacting with both of you at the same time. I can like feel it, you know what I mean? Like
Oh, uh-huh.
sometimes
Yeah.
I like see you do it, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, "Oh my god, what the
Like, what just
like it's
happened?
I can just like see you guys like look at each other or like both think the same thing at this. I think it's that you think the
Oh,
same thing at the same time
yeah,
because you
yeah.
just like have the same like
Yeah, we have like
reaction to things.
similar thought patterns, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think yeah, but I've seen it happen before where you both will just like think the same thing at the same time and then say the same thing at the same time and it's like
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
yeah.
It's pretty
Um
funny. It's pretty funny because we will amuse each other when we do that sometimes. Like, we'll do
yeah.
that sometimes and we'll see that it'll like freak someone out and we'll be like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't do it on purpose. We're still like, oh, hell yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And I think there is like kind of on the same that same note is just the type of humor that you have with your sister,
Mm-hmm.
like specifically that you have with your sister and then I think just in general that like I mean, I have it with my sister as well.
Yeah.
But it's like there are some things that like are just simply only funny to us. And
Yes.
like I don't know why they are so funny to us, but they are and like I
Yeah.
could not explain it to
It's
somebody
all about
else.
that shared experience. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all about it. I mean, constantly it happens that like we'll be doing something and the men will be there, like our men will be with us, and I'll say something or we'll say something or whatever and we'll just like lose it and the men are just like what? Like just
Yeah.
unfazed. And it's like, well, you just, it's
You don't get it.
like it happens constantly.
Yeah, when my sister and I are together, I mean, it happens when we talk on the phone, but like there's nobody else. Like when we just talk to each other, like sometimes we'll like joke and laugh and like whatever, but it's specifically when we're like with other people or like in public or something and like something just like freaking hilarious will happen that like we think is like die worthy or
Uh-huh.
like yeah, we'll like make a joke in response to something that's happening and just like part of it is that like nobody else gets it and that's kind of makes it funnier, you know?
Mhm.
Is that like we'll say something we'll be like oh my god and then like yeah like Abe or like even sometimes my parents will be like what like
Oh,
why are you guys
definitely
like
the parents
laughing
just have no idea what's going
yeah
on.
um
Yeah.
and yeah definitely there's something about like sister humor that is kind of unmatched.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, was there anything else specific that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. I love how so many of our podcasts seem to come back around to us just being like, wow, we're best friends and we love each
I
other.
know. I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you want to do a question?
Yeah,
You
I've
picking
got
one
one.
out? Okay.
I don't think we've done this one, but you'll have to stop me if we have.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Klosterman question or Klosterman question. You work in an office, performing a job you find satisfying and which compensates you adequately. The company that employs you is suddenly purchased by an eccentric millionaire who plans to immediately raise each person's salary by 5% and extend an extra week of vacation to all full time employees. However, this new owner intends to enforce a somewhat radical dress code. Every day, men will have to wear tuxedos, tails, and top hats. During the summer months, male employees will be allowed to wear gray three-piece suits on casual Fridays. Women must exclusively work in formal wear, preferably ball gowns or prom dresses. Each employee will be given an annual stipend to purchase necessary garments, but that money can only be spent on work related clothing. The new regime starts in 3 months. Do you seek employment elsewhere?
That's an interesting one for me specifically.
I know because I'm like, wouldn't you prefer to work in like freaking princess dresses?
Yeah, because that could also be, I don't know. I don't think we've answered this one. This does not seem familiar to me.
Okay.
If we have, then I mean my memory's bad, but like whatever. That just means that I could just answer it again because I don't have memory
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the job is really really good and pays really well and they're going to give you money to buy like
Dresses?
40 hours a week, like 5 days a week, unless it was my ideal full-time schedule that I think the entire society should change to 8 hours a day, 4 days a week, but that's a different podcast. if we're talking
Yeah.
like 40 like a full-time schedule, that's a lot to be wearing. Like, I mean, you don't have to wear a different thing every single day, I guess. I like to try to do
Yeah.
that, but you don't have to do that because
Yeah.
I have a lot of clothes. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if you rewear stuff, like, that's not that big of a deal. But I mean, if it pays super well and the work environment is good, I would do it because I feel like there's actually quite a bit of styles that could fall into the formal wear, like prom formal wear category. Like, you can twist it around, you can have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean,
And I
I
like dresses.
yeah.
I would wear a dress every day,
Yeah.
honestly.
I could definitely be happy, especially because he's like coming in and he's like, "Oh, you get 5% more money and also you get more vacation time." And I'm like all about both of those things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's like you could wear like I wouldn't want to wear like a poofy like in the way dress all the time, but it's like you don't have
No.
to. You can just
Yeah.
wear like, like a you like sometimes formal dresses are like pretty comfy. Like
Right?
they're more comfy than like other things that I have to wear sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and yeah, and then I would like look awesome all the time and I would have all of those dresses for like my vacations as
Right?
well.
Right? Yeah, and honestly, I feel like it's a worse deal for the men because,
Yeah.
like, tuxedos and stuff aren't really that comfortable.
No, and like if you have to wear it when it's like hot outside and stuff, like that would be annoying.
Yeah.
Cause like when it's hot outside, you can just wear a dress with like less,
Yeah. Just wear, like,
like
you know,
strapless or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Or even a short one. Or
yeah,
shorter. I mean, I imagine,
yeah,
you probably can't wear, like, but, like, prom dresses and stuff. Yeah, that,
yeah.
like, would not be that bad of a deal. I would actually kind
No,
of be into that because I like
yeah,
formal styles.
yeah, and especially if I could kind of like have a little fun with it. Like if I could wear like one of those like women's like pantsuits,
Right?
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that are like people wear those to like the red carpet. They'll wear like some like
Mm-hmm.
pants thing, and it's like I would love to wear something like that maybe, or like even like those they're like look like dresses but they're actually like
Yeah.
pants,
I've never worn something like that before, and I would love to try it actually, like in real life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
I would definitely like, yeah, especially if like the people I worked with and like the job itself was like already pretty good, then like yeah, more money, more vacation,
Yeah.
more fancy
I would
clothing in my
stay for the
closet.
foreseeable future.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it's like okay, maybe I would stay for like 2 years and then be like, I'm tired of this, but now I
Yeah.
have more money and dresses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, yeah, that's really not that bad of a deal.
no, not at all.
Yeah. My dream job is a job where I could wear whatever I want every day.
Yeah, kind of same because right now I have a job where I have to wear pants specifically every day
Mm.
and I have to wear a specific type of shirt every day, and that's not the worst, but it's
It's like a little bit
really not the
restricting.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of do that. Like, I can wear, like, pretty much whatever shirt I want, and I have to wear, like, pants and closed-toed shoes because I, like, work in a warehouse. But
Same, yeah.
I get to wear, like, my pretty much normal band t-shirt and skinny jeans every day, so it's, like, pretty much normally what I wear any day. At least it's not, like, a uniform. But, like, my
Yeah.
actual dream job is where I could, like, wear whatever I want every day, which turns out, because I've had a work from home job, and turns out that's not a work from home job, because when I work from home I don't want to put on clothes because then I'll have to wash more clothes. I'll just wear, like, my fancy pajamas or whatever if I'm not leaving the
Exactly.
house. So yeah, if I can have some sort of job where I, like, get to leave the house at least sometimes and, like, wear whatever I want, that's my dream job.
I did like my clothes that I wore when I was teaching.
Yeah, I
I
would be into that because you can kind of wear whatever you want.
You could wear whatever you want, you just can't wear anything like inappropriate,
Yeah,
which is like
which I kind of
fine.
don't do anyway. So
Yeah, like you can't wear anything like too low cut or like short or
yeah,
whatever, which is like fine for me. Like I don't really do that.
yeah,
The only thing was I had a couple of shirts that would have, like, something, slightly, like, like, okay, I have this like one shirt that it's like has like the Seether bunny on it, and it like has like a pentagram on it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
oh, okay, like I probably shouldn't wear that just in case somebody's like sensitive about like
yeah,
pentagrams or something,
yeah. There's definitely
which is like
some
fine.
choice band T-shirts that I like. I get it.
Yeah, and
You
like
know.
nothing with like a swear word on it, which like I don't really
Yeah.
have anything that has
Right. I
that
don't think I
anyways,
do.
but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just in case I wouldn't be able to wear that.
Yeah. I mean, I
So
don't
like
want to be a teacher, but
yeah, and I mean that was
yeah.
specifically like teaching college. I mean I know
Oh,
you have to
yeah.
be even more restrictive when you like
Yeah, like high
teach
school and stuff.
high school, like yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I would like to have a job where I can wear better clothes. Um,
Yeah.
but alas.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
until next time, I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.